Senator Bob Corker, member of the Banking Committee, continues with his message on ending the Fed's dual mandate, and he joins us right now. Senator, I was alluding to you took a tongue lashing. Secretary Geithner said, stop what you're doing, young man, about politicizing the Fed. Some people think it's already too late to not politicize the Fed.
Yeah, well, I think Secretary Geithner probably ought to do a little more listening and less talking. It's not criticizing the Fed, it's trying to narrow the mandate. We're the only developed country in the world where the Fed has a dual mandate, and it's that causes the Fed to be politicized. The fact that they have a dual mandate, the fact that they are in charge of managing our economy. I actually think that many of the Fed governors would love to see a single mandate where they just focused on price stability, which is what happens in the rest of the developed world. So I think it's guys like Secretary Geithner that want the Fed managing the economy that subject it to the politicization that you've seen most recently.
He said, or not hit, but we had Rick Mishkin on yesterday, and we were talking about this a lot, Senator, and he said price stability is by far the most important thing that the Fed looks at. But if there's an output gap and it gets to a certain point where they think that they can help a little bit in terms of stimulating some demand, that they're ready to do it, especially when rates are at zero and when there's not going to be any fiscal stimulus forthcoming. So it's perfectly natural and justified for the Fed to do it in this case.
Yeah, I've said all along, look, I have concerns about inflation and I have concerns about some of the longer-term impacts, but I don't think you can tell the effects of quantitative easing until you look in the rearview mirror. I've said that all along. I actually think that Chairman Bernanke and others would be doing exactly what they're doing right now because I think they're worried about deflation. I think they'd like to see the economy grow at 2.5%, as you just mentioned, as a minimum. I think they'd like to see inflation at 2%. It's below that now, and so I don't think the Fed would be acting any differently than it is today if they had price stability as their mandate. But what I think happens is when they have this dual mandate, the entire world looks at what they're doing and wonders whether they're trying to develop an unfair advantage for our economy as it relates to the rest of the world's economy. So I truly believe if we had a single mandate, the Fed would not be actually receiving the criticism that it's receiving today. And again, I think over time, you're going to see Fed governors saying we should have a single mandate. That's what the Bank of Japan has. That's what the Bank of England has. That's what the European Central Bank has. As a matter of fact, there was a major debate in Mexico recently as people began talking about it having a dual mandate. And many people said, no, this will cause the central bank in Mexico to be politicized. Yeah, sure. So I actually think this is very healthy for the Fed. I think it's very healthy for our relations around the world. I think it's the right thing to do. This is a new thing. It only came into play in 1978. So again, this is not about attacking the Fed. Congress gave Fed these powers. It was too broad when it was put in place in the late 70s. We need to change that. I actually think they'd be criticized less if they had a single mandate.
Some people are glad that Congress is out of the equation and they just wish the Fed would get out, right, Senator Corker?
Yeah, just because viewers may think Congress ought to be doing more, ought to be doing less, or should be acting differently, that doesn't mean that we should just give the Fed the responsibilities to be masters of the universe in this regard. That's an inappropriate. Matter of fact, it might keep Congress from acting the way that it should. I think the thing that we need to do as a country is address our deficit issue in a responsible way. We've had a group come out. Alan Simpkins and Erskine Bowles have come out with something that, you know, at least a start, a bold move. And to me, that's the thing that we should, that's the signal we need to send to the markets, is acting responsibly as it relates to getting our indebtedness under control. We're watching things play out in Europe that are incredibly unhealthy. We have not yet shown that courage. We do have in April or May a time when the debt ceiling has to be increased, and I hope by that time we will have acted responsibly as it relates to this issue. So I agree that we need to do some things that we haven't been doing, but that doesn't mean if we don't, there ought to be another body out there that acts independently if we don't. That's inappropriate.